Rain walked in from the desert like a stranger with secrets. It laid a gray veil over Silver Briar and turned the street to clay. Lamps guttered. A piano tried and quit. Colt Mercer rode in slow, coat dark with rain, eyes the color of old iron, brim low, a long time on the trail. He tied his bay outside the saloon and listened to the roof drum. Inside, the room held a hush. Cards lay in a crooked fan. The barkeep polished one glass. Sheriff Abel Hartwell stood by the rail, tall and straight, a lawman who did not show doubt. Beside him, like a wild note in a hymn, stood his daughter, Eliza Hartwell. She did not look at Colt at first. She watched the window as if the storm wrote a message there. Dark hair pinned but restless, a dress the color of old cream. When she turned, the room found a slower breath. Steady brown eyes, a horizon inside them. She did not flinch. Colt felt the old ache. The ache of a man who once believed in softer nights and learned the hard edge instead. He moved to the bar. Whiskey, no talk. The glass found his hand. The sheriff watched. The room watched the sheriff. Silver Briar listened to its law first. Abel Hartwell spoke when the thunder paused. You ride far for a night like this. Colt tasted the whiskey. I ride where the road ends. Roads end at the county line. The sheriff said, not here. Eliza moved. A small motion. Heat from a fire not yet built. Colt noticed the damp curl at her temple and wished he had not. A man coughed. A chair creaked. The saloon pressed with words not said. Colt set the glass down. A little bell of sound. I am not here for trouble, he said. No one rests when Wade Kincaid rides near, the sheriff said. The name stirred the air. Wade Kincaid, the outlaw who burned for debt and called it payment. The laugh that lived like a thorn. Colt knew that laugh. It sat behind his ribs like a cold coin. Eliza's gaze sharpened. She stepped past her father into the lantern light. Her voice was low. If Kincaid rides near, we need quiet hands tonight. Colt met her eyes and found neither fear nor fire, alone, but both, braided. The rain pressed harder on the roof as if to say time still moves. The door blew open. A boy stumbled in, soaked to the bone. 15, maybe, hat too big, breath like a gallop. Riders, he said. 4, maybe 5, down at the river bend. Kincaid's brand. Chairs scraped. Cards fell. The sheriff turned to iron. Bar the windows. Get the women upstairs. No panic. He faced Colt. Name, Colt Mercer. You carry a past, Mercer. Everyone does. The sheriff nodded once. He looked to his daughter. Eliza, go home. Lock the door. I will send Sloan. She did not move. That road runs past the river bend, she said. If Kincaid comes, home is a promise he does not keep. Colt watched duty fight blood on Hartwell's face. He knew that war. He had lost it once. He turned to the boy. How long? 10 minutes. Maybe less. The barkeep slid a shotgun across the bar. Colt pushed it back. He preferred the weight at about his hip. Outside, the horse stamped and tossed its head like it tasted fear in the wind. Eliza slipped near him as the sheriff gave orders. Wild sage and rain. You know Kincaid, she said. I know what he leaves behind. You came to end it. He did not answer. The thunder did. But then she whispered, soft enough to lean for it. Be careful. He hunts the wounded places. Colt turned. For a breath the room fell away. Her eyes held the desert at dusk, wide, honest, hurt that had learned to stand. Something old shifted in him, like a gate easing on its hinge. Abel Hartwell saw their angle and did not like it. Stranger, he said, if you draw in my town, you draw for justice, not revenge. Sometimes they wear the same hat, Colt said. A first shot cracked outside. Men flinched. The window shivered. A bottle fell and broke. The boy ducked and ran for the stairs. Colt moved to the doorframe and found the dark line of the street. 5 riders fanned from the south, rain shining on their slickers. The lad man lifted a torch. The flame fought the storm like a stubborn sin. Lightning flashed and found his grin. Wade Kincaid looked pleased to be expected. Colt's pulse settled, calm, clear, the kind of quiet a man earns by walking through fire and leaving a piece of himself there. Eliza's hand brushed his sleeve, a light touch that found a tether he did not know he still had. He covered her hand for one breath, warmth, safety, a promise without words. Then he let go. The sheriff lifted his rifle and called out, "This is Silver Briar. Turn back." Kincaid laughed and raised the torch higher. "I came for the sheriff's pride," he called, "and for what the sheriff loves. Let the night decides who keeps what." The flame threw a wild light. It found Eliza's face in the doorway, Kincaid's eyes fixed on her. His smile harmed the air. Colt felt the town hold its breath. He set his stance and reached for the iron that had tried to save him before. The storm leaned in to listen. The first fight of the night began, and under it, something deeper began too, quiet as a vow beneath the rain. If this story has warmed a quiet corner of your heart, stay close. The night still has more to tell. Let your presence be known so this fire keeps burning in the dark. When the rain slows, the next turn will be waiting in the hush. The morning came gray and torn. Smoke hung over Silver Briar like breath that wouldn't leave. The rain had quit, but left its fingerprints on everything: mud, blood, the sharp smell of spent powder. Colt Mercer stood beside the saloon steps, hat low, shoulders soaked. His revolver still warm, his eyes colder than dawn. 4 riders lay in the street. Kincaid wasn't among them. He'd slipped through the fog with his laugh trailing like a promise. Sheriff Hartwell walked out from the alley, rifle across his chest. His face was cut with exhaustion. "You draw quick," he said. "I draw when I have to." Hartwell's gaze was hard, but not ungrateful. "My deputy's dead. You stood where I needed another man." Colt said nothing. He looked down the street, to where Eliza stood by the livery stable, arms wrapped around herself, dress wet at the hem. The dawn wind teased a few strands of her dark hair. She didn't look away when his eyes found her. She crossed the mud slowly, boots sinking, every step quiet. The air between them felt alive with things neither one could speak yet. "You shouldn't be here," he said. "And you should be gone," she answered. Her voice was low, steady, but neither of us listens well. Colt's jaw flexed. "Your father is busy burying what Kincaid left. I can choose where to stand." She studied him for a breath. He was looking for something. Kincaid, something you both know. Colt's silence was the kind that hides a wound. He's been chasing ghosts for years. "Maybe," she said, "but this time the ghost has a name. Mercer." The word hit like thunder in clear sky. Colt turned his face away. "You've been asking questions." "I've been living in a town full of men who lie," she said. "You ride in on the same night Kincaid burns another ranch. You think I don't see the trail between you." Colt looked at her then, really looked. She didn't flinch from the truth she thought she held. Her strength startled him. "He killed my brother," he said, finally. The words came rough, pulled from a place too deep to hide. 2 winters ago, over gold that never existed, he left him in the canyon to freeze. Eliza's eyes softened, not with pity, but understanding. So you came here to finish it. I came here because Kincaid did, he said. Vengeance has its own map. She stepped closer, close enough that he could smell rain in her hair. And if it costs you what's left of you. He almost smiled. Then maybe that's all I had left to spend. The saloon door creaked. The sheriff stood there, watching. Eliza, he said, voice tired but sharp. Go home. She hesitated. Colt caught the flicker of hurt before she hit it. She obeyed, turning toward the road, coat pulled tight. Her father waited until she was gone before speaking. Kincaid won't stop, Hartwell said. He's got men hiding in the hills. You brought his fire here. I didn't invite him. You drew him. The sheriff's tone cooled. If you want revenge, do it outside my county. Colt met his eyes. You think he'll care where the line is? I think I'll make him care. A gust of wind rolled the dust back across the dead men. Somewhere in the distance a crow called once. Hartwell looked out toward the desert. He wants my daughter, he said quietly. That's what tonight told me. He'll come for her next. He's not after gold anymore. He's after pain. Colt's chest tightened. Then he's already lost something that cut deep. The sheriff glanced at him. And you? What are you willing to lose? Colt didn't answer. His silence said enough. That evening the town buried its dead under a red horizon. The preacher's words scattered on the wind. Eliza stood apart, cloak pulled over her hair. When Colt passed behind her, she spoke without turning. I saw the way you looked when you said his name, she murmured. You still bleed for it. Colt's voice was low. Some wounds keep their shape. She turned then, eyes lit by the last sunlight. Maybe they don't have to. The sound of her voice touched something raw and tender in him, something that remembered the warmth of a woman's hand after too many nights alone. He wanted to turn away, but couldn't. A distant rider appeared on the ridge. The town's quiet cracked again. Hartwell shouted orders. Men reached for guns. The rider dropped something into the dust near the well and vanished. Colt and Eliza walked forward together. In the dirt lay a silver locket, its chain broken. Colt picked it up. Inside was a small sketch, smudged by rain, the face of a boy. Colt froze. Eliza looked up. Your brother? He nodded once. Beneath the drawing, a single line burned into the metal. Debt never dies. The wind rose, sharp and cold. Eliza's hand brushed his arm. He's calling you out, she said. No, Colt whispered. He's calling us both. The sheriff's voice cut across the square. Mercer, if you're staying, we make a plan. If you're leaving, do it now. Colt looked at Eliza. The horizon glowed like a dying fire. Somewhere beyond it waited the man who had taken everything that once made him gentle. He slipped the locket into his coat. I'll stay, he said. Eliza nodded, her voice a whisper. Then I will too. If this story has stirred a quiet storm inside you, stay close. The desert hasn't finished speaking yet. When the wind changes, the next truth will rise from the dust. Night fell heavy on Silver Briar. The storm was gone, but the silence it left behind felt like a wound that refused to close. The lamps burned low in the sheriff's office, shadows stretching long across the floorboards. Colt Mercer sat in a corner chair, hat on his knee, watching the fire gnaw at a piece of oak. Sheriff Hartwell cleaned his rifle by lamplight, every motion deliberate. Neither man spoke for a while. The kind of quiet between them wasn't peace. It was waiting. Finally, Hartwell broke it. Kincaid's camp sits 3 miles south, near the wash. My scout saw his fire at dusk. Colt's gaze didn't move from the flames. He's baiting you. He's baiting someone. the sheriff said. Maybe you. Colt set his hat on the desk, slow and careful. Then let him think I'll bite. Hartwell studied him. I've known men like you, Mercer. Men who came back from the edge because revenge was the only thing loud enough to call them home. Colt met his eyes. And how many of them stayed? The sheriff didn't answer. He looked down, thumb brushing the metal of the rifle. I got one daughter left. I don't plan to lose her to someone else's ghosts. Colt rose. Then we keep her behind walls tonight. Kincaid won't come through the front. A knock at the door cut through their talk. Eliza stepped in before either man could answer. The lamplight found her hair, loose now, darker than the room around her. She carried a tin of coffee, hands steady, though her eyes told of a sleepless day. I thought you both could use this, she said. Hartwell frowned. You should be home, Eliza. Home's 2 streets away, Father, she said softly. And I can shoot straighter than Sloan could, God rest him. The sheriff's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Colt took the cup she offered. Her fingers brushed his for half a heartbeat, and something quiet passed between them, an understanding neither dared name. You're not afraid, Colt said. Afraid? She echoed. Of dying, maybe, of losing what little I believe in. That's worse. Hartwell looked between them, a flicker of worry deepening in his eyes. Enough talk. Mercer, take the back room. She'll stay in the jail tonight. Safer behind bars than windows. Eliza gave a faint smile. I've been caged before, Father. Didn't like it then, either. Colt caught that note. Something behind her words. A past not spoken of. He wanted to ask, but didn't. The walls in this town held too many stories already. Later, when the sheriff had gone to make rounds, the fire burned lower. The room softened in the dim. Eliza sat by the window, chin resting on her knees, watching the night. Colt leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, studying her reflection in the glass. You carry a shadow, he said quietly. She turned, brow lifting. And you think you don't? I know I do. Difference is, mine wears a name. She looked away, voice low. So does mine. I was promised once, to a man who smiled like a preacher and hit like a storm. The words landed heavy. Colt stepped closer, the floor creaking beneath his boots. Did he die? He's gone, she said, cutting the question off. Years now, but some ghosts don't stay buried. You can feel them breathing when the wind changes. Colt nodded slowly. I know that wind. She met his eyes again, and in that stillness, 2 lives scarred by different men found a quiet sameness. The sound of the fire filled the silence between them. Outside, a coyote howled. The sound rolled through the valley, lonely as prayer. Eliza rose and came closer to the warmth. Do you ever stop thinking about it? She asked, the moment everything went wrong. Every night, Colt said, but some nights it hurts less. She looked into the flames. Maybe that's what healing is, not forgetting, just learning how to breathe again. He watched her face soften in the orange light, the reflection of fire moving through her eyes. Something in him loosened, like a hand unclenching after too long holding pain. But then the quiet broke. A distant gunshot cracked through the dark, followed by another. Colt straightened. That came from the ridge. The sheriff burst through the door, rifle ready. 2 men tried the east fence, got one. The other ran. They're testing us. Colt grabbed his coat. Then they're close. Eliza reached for his arm before he stepped outside. You can't chase him in the dark. I've hunted darker things, he said. Her grip tightened. Then don't hunt alone. He looked down at her hand, small but fierce against his sleeve. You trust too easy. She shook her head. No, I just recognized the kind of man who's already chosen his fight. He held her gaze for a heartbeat longer than he should have. Then he slipped free and walked into the night. The sheriff followed, calling orders. The door shut behind them, leaving Eliza alone with the dying fire. The glow painted her face in soft gold. She whispered into the quiet, though no one was there to hear. "Come back." Outside, Colt moved through the darkness, the desert wind cutting cold and sharp. Somewhere ahead, Wade Kincaid's laughter rode the night again, mocking, distant, full of promise. And beneath that cruel sound, Colt felt another pull, something warmer, fragile, worth staying alive for. If this story has found its way into your heart, let it rest there a while. The fire's still burning, and the night hasn't told all it knows yet. The moon broke through the clouds before dawn, pale and watchful. Colt Mercer rode out past the ridge where the desert met the canyon, the wind pushing grit through the air. The earth still smelled of gunpowder and wet sage. He kept his eyes low, reading the trail like scripture. Hoof marks, a cut branch, the faint shimmer of a torch gone cold. He found blood on a rock, dark as rust. Not much, but enough to say a man had fled, and not far. He followed it into the dry wash, each step of his horse a whisper. The world was quiet except for the saddle leather creaking, the low hum of the wind, and his heartbeat reminding him he was still here. A figure moved against the dawn. Colt swung down, pistol drawn. The man slumped near a mesquite tree, one leg twisted wrong, face pale with loss. He wasn't Kincaid, but he wore Kincaid's colors. Colt crouched beside him. "You've got two choices," he said. "Talk or let the buzzards take your secrets." The man coughed, blood flecking his lips. "You think he cares what I say? Kincaid owns death itself." Colt's voice didn't rise. "Then you'll meet him soon. Might as well take something from him before you go." The man looked up, eyes sharp with fear, and the kind of regret that comes too late. "He ain't after you anymore, Mercer. He's after her." Colt's jaw locked. "Eliza. He says the sheriff stole his blood once. Says he'll take the sheriff's blood now. All of it." Colt's hand tightened on his gun. The desert wind shifted, carrying the sound of distant hooves. He looked south and saw dust curling against the horizon, too much for one rider. Kincaid was moving fast. He stood, eyes narrowing. "You picked the wrong man to die for." He left the outlaw where he fell and rode hard for town. The sun broke over the mesa, painting the world in cruel light. Every hoofbeat echoed his pulse. Too late, too late. Silver Briar came into view, small and brittle against the open land. Smoke rose from the blacksmith's forge. The sheriff's office door stood open. Colt jumped down before the horse stopped moving. Inside the place was empty, chairs overturned, maps scattered. He ran to the back room. The cell door hung open. The blanket on the cot was gone. "Eliza." No answer. Only the wind pushing through the cracked window. He turned, fury cold and clear now. Hartwell burst in from the side street, face gray, coat half-buttoned. "They took her," he rasped. "3 of them, before sunrise." Kincaid left a mark on the door. Colt followed him outside. Burned into the wood, black and crude, was the image of a snake coiled around a heart. Kincaid's sign. The sheriff's hands shook. "We'll need men, horses." "No," Colt said, voice steady. "Men will only slow us. Kincaid's heading for the canyon, his ground. He'll expect noise. I'll go quiet." Hartwell stared at him. You think I'll let you ride alone for my daughter?" Colt met his gaze, steel against steel. "You want her alive, Sheriff? Then you let the man Kincaid hates most go bring her back." Hartwell's jaw worked, torn between pride and desperation. "If you don't come back, then bury me beside the ridge," Colt said. "But she'll come home first." He turned and mounted up, the wind tugging at his coat. For a moment the sheriff just watched him, then gave a single nod. "Bring her back, Mercer." Colt didn't answer. He spurred the horse and thundered out of Silver Briar, the dust swallowing his shadow. The trail bent south, cutting through dry ravines and twisted trees. He rode until the land opened into a scar of red stone and shadow, the canyon. He slowed, listening. A hawk screamed somewhere overhead, then faint but clear, a woman's voice, muffled, breaking against the wind. Eliza. He followed the sound down into the hollow. There she was, tied to a wagon wheel, wrists raw, hair wild in the morning light. Kincaid stood a few feet away, revolver loose in his hand, smile slow and cruel. "Well, I'll be," Kincaid drawled. "Colt Mercer, come to trade one ghost for another." Colt dismounted, moving calm, every muscle coiled tight. "Let her go." "Not yet. You took my brother in Dry Creek. I figured I'd return the kindness." "You killed mine." "Circle of things," Kincaid said with a grin. "Don't look so surprised." Colt took one slow step forward. "She's got nothing to do with this." "Oh, she does," Kincaid said. "She's the lawman's heart, and hearts are the only things worth breaking." He raised his gun. Colt moved first. One shot, then another. The world lit with noise and dust. Kincaid stumbled, fired back. Colt felt the burn tear across his shoulder. Eliza screamed. When the smoke cleared, Kincaid was gone, vanished into the rocks, leaving blood and laughter behind. Colt cut Eliza free, hands shaking. "You all right?" he asked. She nodded, breath ragged. "You're bleeding." He smiled, grim and quiet. "I've bled worse." She reached up, fingers brushing his face. "Why would you come for me?" His answer came rough. "Because I couldn't not." For a long moment they just looked at each other, the canyon silent except for the wind. Then she leaned against him, her forehead resting on his chest. He let her stay there, one arm around her shoulders, the other pressing against his wound. Blood and dust, and the scent of her hair. It all blurred into something he couldn't name. He thought of the sheriff, of promises he'd never made, but somehow meant. He thought of his brother's grave. He thought of peace, and how it sometimes looked like this, brief, fragile, borrowed from the storm. If this story has touched a quiet ache inside you, stay close. The desert wind still carries their breath, and the next dawn hasn't spoken its truth yet. The ride back to Silver Briar was slow. Colt's wound burned with every movement, blood seeping through his torn sleeve. The canyon behind them was still, as if holding its breath. Eliza sat behind him, arms around his waist, her cheek against his back. She didn't speak, and he didn't ask her to. Silence was safer than words just then. By the time the town's rooftops appeared through the dust, the sun was bleeding into the horizon. Smoke curled from the chimney of the sheriff's house. When they reached the porch, Hartwell burst through the door, rifle in hand. The moment he saw Eliza, his breath caught. She slid down from the horse before he could reach her. "I'm fine," she said, voice trembling but steady. "He's gone, for now." Hartwell's eyes found Colt's shoulder. "You're hurt." "It'll mend." "Get inside," the sheriff said to his daughter, softer now. "There's clean water on the table." Eliza hesitated, looking at Colt, as if unsure whether to obey. He gave a small nod. She went in. Hartwell watched her disappear, then turned to Colt. You found her. You did what I couldn't. For that, you've got my thanks. Colt slid from the saddle, boots sinking into the dirt. Don't thank me yet. Kincaid's still breathing. The sheriff's eyes darkened. He'll come again. He will, though Colt's voice was quiet. But next time, it won't be for revenge. It'll be for blood. They stood there, two men bound by the same storm, law and outlaw, both carrying ghosts. Finally, Hartwell said, You'll stay until you heal. Colt looked toward the dim window where Eliza's shadow moved. You sure that's wise? The sheriff followed his gaze, then back to Colt. Wise? No, but it's right. Inside, the house smelled of coffee and cedar smoke. Eliza sat by the fire, a basin beside her. When Colt stepped in, she rose, lips parting at the sight of his wound. Sit, she said, already reaching for a cloth. He obeyed, though his pride fought it. She tore a strip from her dress's lining, dampened it, and pressed it gently against his shoulder. The sting made him wince. You should have let your father handle this, he said. He'd only make it worse, she murmured. Men don't know how to be careful when they're angry. Her hands worked steady, sure. The heat of her touch moved through him in a way the fire couldn't. He studied her face in the glow, the strength there, the softness she tried to hide. You ever wonder, she said quietly, why people like us keep finding pain? He gave a rough half-smile. Maybe because we don't know what to do with peace. She looked up. And if peace found you? I'd probably break it by breathing wrong. She smiled faintly. You don't fool me, Mercer. You want quiet as much as any man. He didn't answer. Instead, he reached up and caught her wrist gently, stopping her hand. You're shaking, he said. It's nothing, she whispered. But it wasn't nothing. He could feel the tremor, small and real. Without thinking, he pulled her closer until she stood between his knees, her breath brushing his face. The world narrowed to the sound of the fire and the wild rhythm beneath their silence. Colt, she said softly. Yeah. What happens when this ends? He hesitated. Maybe it doesn't. Her eyes glimmered, uncertain, hopeful. Then her father's boots sounded on the porch. She stepped back fast, breaking the spell. Hartwell came in, face grim. We've got riders moving west of town. Could be nothing, could be scouts. Colt stood, ignoring the pull in his wound. Then I'll take the hill. You'll do no such thing? The sheriff snapped. You're half dead. Half's enough. Eliza moved between them. Please, both of you. Just one night without guns. Neither man spoke. The silence said more than words could. Finally, Hartwell relented. Fine, but at first light, we move. I want to know where Kincaid's crawling. He left for the bunkhouse, leaving them alone again. The fire cracked softly. Eliza turned to Colt. You should rest. Can't, he said. Every time I close my eyes, I see him. She knelt beside his chair. Then look at me instead. He did. And for the first time since the canyon, he let the tension leave his body. The light caught in her eyes. Warm, steady, a promise he didn't deserve. She reached out, fingers brushing the edge of his jaw, tracing the stubble like it mattered. You saved me. He shook his head. You saved yourself. I just got in the way. Her hand lingered there, then fell. Maybe we both did. Outside, the night wind swept across the desert, carrying the scent of rain and something new. Hope, fragile and foolish, but alive. Colt leaned back, eyes on the fire. Tomorrow will bring trouble, he said. Eliza's voice was a whisper. Then let tonight be kind. If this story has found warmth in you, Hold it close. The desert's quiet now, but dawn always brings another reckoning beneath the same wide sky. The storm returned before sunrise. It came crawling over the plains, dark and cold, dragging wind like knives. The sheriff's windows rattled. The fire in the hearth fought to live. Colt Mercer sat awake, boots on, hat low, hand near the revolver at his side. He hadn't slept. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the canyon again. Kincaid's grin, the flash of the gun, Eliza's face pale in the torchlight. The memory breathed louder than the wind. The door creaked. Eliza stepped out of her room, a shawl around her shoulders. "You're still up," she whispered. "Couldn't rest," he said. "Storm talks too much." She poured coffee from the pot on the stove. "You listen too close." He almost smiled. "Habit." She handed him the cup and sat across from him, tucking her feet beneath her skirt. The lamplight painted her face gold, made her eyes soft. "You'll go after him again, won't you?" He didn't answer right away. A man like Kincaid doesn't stop. "You let him live. You feed the fire." Her voice dropped. "And what will be left of you when it's done?" He looked at her over the rim of the cup. "Doesn't much matter." "Yes, it does," she said. "You can't make healing out of revenge." Something in him flinched. "You sound like a preacher." She smiled faintly. "Maybe I just sound like someone who's tired of watching men destroy themselves." They sat quiet for a while, listening to the storm's breath on the roof. Outside, a shutter banged against the wall. The sound felt like a heartbeat, slow and stubborn. When the sheriff came in, coat dripping, his face was set hard. "Tracks," he said. "North of the river, 5 men. Could be Kincaid's." Colt stood. "Then he's circling back." Hartwell nodded. "He wants me to chase him." "He wants you alone," Colt said. "He'll come at you through what you love." Their eyes met, an understanding no law could name. Eliza rose, fear flickering in her face. "Then I'm the bait," she said quietly. "No," Hartwell barked. "You stay inside, doors barred." She turned to Colt. "You know he's right. If Kincaid wants to end this, he'll come here." Colt shook his head. "You're not facing him again." Her voice softened but didn't break. "I already did." The sheriff loaded his rifle. "I'll take the barn watch. Mercer, you stay with her." When the door closed behind him, the wind filled the silence. The lamp flickered. Eliza drew closer to the fire. "You think he'll come tonight?" she asked. Colt's hand brushed the revolver's grip. "I think the storm's hiding more than rain." She studied him for a moment, the muscles in his jaw, the way his eyes never left the window. "You live like a man waiting to disappear," she said. He looked at her then, something raw, moving behind his calm. "Maybe I already did." She stepped closer. "Then let me find what's left." He didn't move when she touched his chest, her palm over his heartbeat. The air thickened, heavy with everything they hadn't said. The storm outside rose like an echo of what lived between them. "Eliza," he said, voice rough. She looked up at him, inches away. "Tell me not to." He should have. But he didn't. Their lips met, soft at first, like two souls learning how to breathe again. Then deeper, hungrier, the world falling away until only the heat of her mouth and the rain on the roof existed. His hand found the small of her back. Her fingers tangled in his shirt. The firelight climbed across them, painting their shadows as one. When they finally broke apart, her breath trembled. "You didn't stop me," she whispered. He touched her cheek. "I didn't want to." For a moment they stood there in the hush, the wind beating at the walls. Then a sound split the quiet, a horse's cry, close, urgent. Colt's hand went to his gun. "He's here." Eliza's eyes widened. "My father." Colt moved to the window. Lanterns flickered near the barn, figures in the rain. He turned back. "Stay low. Don't move until I say." She caught his arm. "You can't fight them alone." He looked at her, the stormlight flashing in his eyes. "I've been fighting alone my whole damn life." He pulled free and stepped into the rain. The cold hit him like truth. Out by the barn, 2 riders dismounted, guns drawn. Colt raised his revolver and fired once, the shot splitting the storm. The sheriff's rifle answered from the shadows. 1 man dropped, another ran for cover. Lightning lit the field. Then a 3rd shadow moved behind the horse stalls. Kincaid. "Mercer." Kincaid's voice tore through the rain. "Come finish it." Colt's pulse steadied. He stepped forward, water streaming off his hat. "I planned to." A flash, a shot, thunder folding over thunder. The sheriff shouted his name. Colt felt the impact, hot and sudden, like being punched by fire. He staggered, knees buckling. Through the blur, he saw Kincaid retreating into the storm, laughing, leaving chaos behind. Eliza's scream cut through the rain. She ran to him, dropped to her knees, hands catching his face. "Colt, look at me." He tried to speak, but the words drowned under the thunder. Her tears mixed with rain, falling on his skin. "Don't you leave me," she whispered. He found her hand, gripped it weakly. "Not yet." The sheriff knelt beside them, rifle still in hand, eyes wide with shock. "He's gone north, No," Colt rasped. "He'll come back. He always does." The rain eased, softening to a whisper. Eliza pressed his head against her shoulder, holding him as if that alone could keep him tethered to the earth. He closed his eyes, breathing in her warmth, the scent of her hair, the promise of something worth living for. If this story has reached the quiet part of your heart, stay with it. The storm has only broken the silence. The firelight still waits to heal what the rain could not. The storm passed by dawn. The town awoke to the smell of rain-soaked dust and the echo of gunfire still clinging to the air. The clouds thinned to silver ribbons over the hills, and the first light crept through the window of the sheriff's house, soft and pale. Colt Mercer lay on the cot by the fire, shirt open, shoulder wrapped tight in linen. The bullet had passed through, grazing deep but sparing bone. He was alive. Though the night had taken pieces of him, it would never return. Eliza sat beside him, her hair unbound, face drawn from exhaustion and relief. Her fingers rested lightly on his arm, feeling the faint rise and fall of his breath. She had not left his side since the rain stopped. He stirred, eyes opening slow. The light found them gray and tired, but still burning. "You're still here," he rasped. "Wasn't planning on leaving," she said softly. He managed a faint smile. "Could have fooled me. You look like you fought the storm yourself." "I did." Her voice trembled but held. "And you nearly lost." He turned his head toward her. "Would have been worse if you hadn't run to me." "You shouldn't thank me," she whispered. "I don't know what I was thinking." He reached for her hand. "You were thinking like someone who's tired of losing people." Her eyes filled, though she tried to blink it back. "You don't know what that's like." He gave a rough laugh that turned into a cough. "I've buried more names than I can remember. Trust me, I know." She leaned closer, voice breaking. "Then don't make me bury yours." He looked at her a long moment, and the silence between them filled with warmth instead of fear. "You're a stubborn woman, Eliza Hartwell. And you're a fool, Colt Mercer," she said, smiling through the tears. But maybe fools are the only ones brave enough to love in a place like this. The word love hung in the air, fragile as glass. He didn't reach for it, didn't need to. It was already there, in her voice, in the way her fingers trembled when she touched his cheek. The door opened softly. Sheriff Hartwell stood there, hat in hand. His eyes moved from his daughter to Colt. "Heard you're too stubborn to die, Mercer." Colt tried to sit up, winced. "Guess death decided I wasn't worth the trouble." Hartwell stepped closer. "Kincaid's trail's cold. He's hiding in the North Pass. My men can't move till the storm clears the mud." Colt's gaze hardened. He won't hide long. He needs an audience. The sheriff studied him. "You're still bleeding, and yet I can see that look. You mean to go after him?" Colt didn't answer. He didn't have to. Hartwell sighed, old and tired. "You saved her. That's more than I could have asked. You don't owe us anything else." Colt's jaw set. "You don't understand. This doesn't end until he's gone. For her. For my brother." The sheriff nodded slowly. "Then I'll ride with you." Eliza stood fast. "No. You'll both die if you go half-healed and half-blind with anger." Colt turned to her, eyes gentle but firm. "If I don't go, he'll come back. He always does. Some men only understand an ending." Her voice cracked. "Then let it end without you breaking with it." He reached for her hand again, pulled her close enough that she could feel his breath. "You once told me healing isn't forgetting. Maybe you're right. Maybe healing's doing what you have to, so someone else can rest easy." She wanted to argue, but the truth in his tone stopped her. The fire popped, and the air between them shifted. Something tender, something final. "Colt," she whispered, "if you walk out that door again, you'll take my heart with you." He brushed his fingers through her hair, slow, reverent. "Then keep mine till I come back." He kissed her, slow, deep, full of everything the desert had taken from both of them. The world shrank to the taste of salt and smoke, to the sound of her breath catching against his. When he pulled away, he whispered, "This ain't goodbye, just a promise I plan to keep." By noon, the sky had cleared. Colt saddled his horse, every movement measured through the ache in his shoulder. The sheriff waited by the gate, rifle slung across his back. Eliza stood on the porch, arms wrapped around herself, watching him like she could stop time by sheer will. He looked back once. Their eyes met, and he gave her the smallest nod, a vow, silent but sure. Then he turned toward the hills, where the wind carried the scent of sage and vengeance. As he disappeared into the distance, Eliza whispered to the empty air, "Come back to me, Colt Mercer. If this story has found a flicker of hope in you, let it stay. The sun may rise on blood and dust, but somewhere beneath it, a promise still burns bright." The wind cut sharp across the northern pass. It carried the scent of pine and gunpowder, of men who didn't plan to live long. The land there was raw, jagged rock, cliffs veined with ice, a canyon floor waiting for echoes that never faded. Colt Mercer rode slow, the kind of pace a hunter takes when he knows he's the one being hunted too. His shoulder burned, the wound reopening with every step of the horse. But pain kept him honest. It kept him awake. He followed Kincaid's trail through the ash and mud, boot prints, a broken stirrup strap. The mark of a fire snuffed out in haste. Each sign told the same story. Kincaid wasn't far. By late afternoon the sky bruised to a deep gray. He found the camp tucked beneath a cliff wall. 3 horses, 2 men, 1 fire burning low. Kincaid sat with his back to the flame, cleaning his revolver like a preacher polishing his sins. Colt dismounted without sound, boots sinking into the damp earth. He moved closer until his voice could reach, but not carry. "Kincaid." The outlaw turned, smile thin, eyes pale as glass. "Knew you'd come limping after me, Mercer. You always finish what ain't yours to finish." Colt stepped into the firelight. "This one's mine." Kincaid laughed, low and rough. "You really think your brother died for gold? That was never the debt. You killed my blood first, back in Dry Creek. My boy." The words hit like a bullet Colt hadn't seen coming. Your boy was no innocent. He robbed a widow and left her son for dead. Kincaid's grin faltered but held. "Still my blood." "Then this is all that's left," Colt said quietly. They stared at each other across the flame, two men hollowed out by loss. Around them the wind howled through the pass, carrying the ghosts of every name they'd buried. Kincaid rose, slow and deliberate. "You know, Mercer, I almost pity you. You fight for peace, but you wouldn't know it if it lay down beside you." Colt's fingers brushed the grip of his gun. "Maybe, but I'll know silence when it comes." The first shot broke the dusk. Fast, close. Both men fired, the sound rolling through the canyon like thunder, trapped in bone. Kincaid's bullet grazed Colt's ribs. Coltso found Kincaid's shoulder. The outlaw fell but rolled, firing again. Sparks bit the rocks near Colt's feet. He moved with purpose now, no fear left to burn. He circled the fire, smoke curling between them. Kincaid reloaded with shaking hands, blood slick on his wrist. "You think you're better than me," Kincaid hissed. "You think killing me makes you clean?" Colt's voice came steady. "No man walks out clean." He fired once more. The echo died slow. Kincaid slumped forward, eyes wide but empty. The revolver slid from his hand and hit the ground with a dull, final sound. For a long moment, Colt just stood there. The wind eased. The fire cracked softly, painting the rock walls gold. He holstered the gun. His hand trembled once, then stilled. Somewhere deep in his chest, the anger that had driven him this far finally began to quiet. He knelt beside the body, whispering, "It's over." But the desert didn't answer. It rarely did. He buried Kincaid beneath the cliff, where the snowmelt ran, marking the grave with a single stone. Then he mounted his horse and turned toward home. The ride back took 2 days. Each mile felt lighter, though the ache in his ribs stayed. At dusk, on the second day, Silver Briar appeared against the sun. A small town, worn but waiting. Eliza stood outside the sheriff's house when she saw him crest the ridge. The wind lifted her hair, the evening light turning it to copper. When he rode into the street, she didn't wait. She ran to him, skirts trailing in the dust. He dismounted stiffly, and before he could speak, she was in his arms. He held her tight, feeling her heartbeat where his should have been stronger. "You came back," she whispered. "Promised I would." She pulled back just enough to see his face. "Is it done?" He nodded. "It's done." The sheriff stepped onto the porch, eyes heavy but warm. "Town's quiet again," he said. "Seems the wind finally changed." Colt looked at him, then back at Eliza. "Then maybe it's time I stopped chasing ghosts." Her hand found his. "You could stay." He studied her a long while, then smiled, a small real thing that reached his eyes. "You sure this town's got room for a man like me?" She lifted her chin. "It has room for the man you're becoming." He looked out toward the horizon, where the last light died behind the hills. "Then maybe I'll learn what peace feels like after all." She touched his cheek, her voice a whisper. "Maybe it starts right here." And for the first time in years, Colt believed her. If this story has quieted something restless in you, let it rest a while longer. The wind over Silver Briar carries more than dust. It carries the sound of hearts, still learning how to heal beneath the same western sky. The next morning came gentle and gold, the kind of dawn that felt like mercy. Silver Briar woke slowly, doors opening, roosters calling, the smell of coffee rising with wood smoke. The storm was gone. The guns were quiet. Colt Mercer stood at the corral, brushing down his horse, the sunlight soft on his face. His movements were careful, slow, the kind of patience that comes only after too much running. His shoulder still ached, but the pain had dulled into something that almost felt like peace. Behind him, footsteps whispered over the dirt. He didn't turn. He knew the sound. "Eliza," he said. "You remember my steps now," she said softly. He smiled faintly. Hard to forget. She came closer, hands tucked in front of her, eyes watching the horizon. "Father says you'll ride out tomorrow." "That's the plan." "Why?" He rested a hand on the horse's mane. "Because staying means changing, and I ain't sure I know how to do that yet." She looked up at him. "You think healing's something that waits for permission?" He didn't answer. The silence said enough. Eliza took a breath, steadying herself. "You could start over here. My father, he may not say it, but he owes you his peace. We both do." Colt turned then, eyes meeting hers. "You don't owe me anything." She shook her head. "Maybe not, but I want to give it anyway." He stepped closer, close enough to smell the faint sweetness of lavender soap. The desert wind still tangled in her hair. "You don't know what it's like, Eliza. I've lived on the run so long, I don't trust stillness. It feels like a trap." Her voice softened. "Then let me show you it isn't." The words sank deep. He reached up, brushing a strand of hair from her face, fingers grazing her cheek. "You're not afraid of me." "I was," she admitted. "When you first walked into that saloon, you looked like a man who'd already buried his soul. But now, I see the part that crawled out of the grave." He let out a slow breath, eyes closing for a moment. "You talk like you've been through your own graves." She smiled sadly. "We all have. Some just carry flowers instead of guns." The horse nickered softly, breaking the quiet. Colt looked toward the sheriff's office where Eliza Hartwell stood, leaning against the post, watching them both. No anger in his eyes this time. Just a father who'd seen enough pain to stop pretending he could protect his daughter from every road her heart would choose. Colt met his gaze. The sheriff gave a single nod, small but certain. "Permission." Eliza followed Colt's eyes, then whispered, "He knows." "Maybe he's known all along," Colt said, "and maybe I was the only one pretending this couldn't be real." The wind shifted, warm now, carrying the smell of rain-soaked sage. She reached for his hand, threading her fingers through his. "So what happens next?" He looked at her fingers against his scarred knuckles. "I ride out, maybe come back. Maybe I don't." Her voice trembled. "And if you don't?" He leaned close, his forehead brushing hers. "Then remember me where the storm broke, and the sun came after." Tears caught in her lashes, shining in the light. "That's not enough. It's all I know how to promise." She kissed him then, not desperate, not wild, but slow, steady, full of all the things they hadn't dared say. The world fell quiet again. Even the wind seemed to pause to listen. When they parted, she whispered, "I'll wait, but not forever." He smiled, soft and sad. "Then I'll try not to take forever." Later that evening, the town gathered outside the saloon. A quiet kind of celebration. No whiskey-fueled laughter, no wild music, just warmth. Hartwell spoke of rebuilding, of peace, earned the hard way. Colt stood apart, hat in hand, listening to the murmur of gratitude and loss. When the speech ended, Eliza found him near the lamplight. "You could say goodbye, properly this time." "I could," he said, "but it might break something we just fixed." She stepped closer, her voice a whisper. "Then don't say goodbye. Just say you'll find your way back." He looked at her, the firelight painting gold on her skin. "Then I'll find my way back." As the night deepened, he rode out again, the road open before him, stars blooming like silver dust across the sky. Behind him, the lights of Silver Briar faded slow, like embers waiting for dawn. He didn't know where the road would end. Maybe peace, maybe nowhere. But for the first time in years, he rode not to escape something behind, but toward something ahead. If this story has stirred something tender in you, let it stay a while. The road still runs beyond the horizon, and love still rides beside the wind. Dawn broke soft over the desert, the kind of light that didn't blaze. It healed. The air was clean, cool, alive with dust and promise. Colt Mercer rode toward it, slow and steady, the sound of the horse's hooves a rhythm his heart finally matched. He'd ridden half the night, letting the road breathe him quiet. The ghosts were gone now. Even Kincaid's shadow had lost its weight. What lingered instead was her voice. The way Eliza had said, "Come back," like a prayer she didn't believe God would answer. He reached the ridge above Silver Briar just as the first sunlight touched the church steeple. Smoke curled from the sheriff's chimney. The town looked smaller from up here, humble and whole again. He dismounted, hand resting on the saddle horn. The wind tugged at his coat, carrying the scent of sage and wet earth. Somewhere far below, a door creaked open, and he imagined it was her. For a while he just stood there, listening to the silence he'd spent half his life chasing. It didn't scare him anymore. It felt like home. He took the locket from his pocket, the one he'd carried since his brother's death. The silver was tarnished, the chain bent. Inside the sketch had faded, edges soft from time and sweat. He thumbed the engraving at the bottom. "Debt never dies." A slow breath left him. "No," he murmured, "but maybe it gets forgiven." He knelt beside a cluster of desert flowers, pale yellow and reaching for the light, and buried the locket there. The wind lifted, scattering a few grains of sand over the spot, sealing it quiet. When he rose, he felt lighter, not redeemed, just human again. By the time he rode back into town, the streets were waking. A boy carried water buckets from the well. A woman swept her porch. The sheriff stood outside his office, coffee in hand, watching him come. "Didn't think I'd see you again," Hartwell said. Colt swung down from the saddle. "You almost didn't." The sheriff studied him for a moment, then nodded. "Eliza's out by the creek." Colt hesitated, eyes searching the road that led east, then toward the one that led down to the water. "She's still mad?" "Maybe," the sheriff said. "Maybe she's just waiting to see if you meant what you said." Colt smiled faintly. "Then I'd best not keep her waiting." He found her by the creek, where the cottonwoods leaned low, and the world felt small enough to hold. She was kneeling in the shallows, washing a shawl, her hair loose and shining in the morning light. When she looked up and saw him, the stillness broke. "You came back," she said. He nodded. "You told me not to take forever." She laughed softly, shaking her head. "You sure know how to make a woman doubt her prayers." He stepped closer, the creek water whispering around his boots. Guess some prayers just take the long way home. She rose, eyes searching his. Is it over? Yeah, he said quietly. It's over. She looked at him for a long moment, then reached up, fingers brushing the scar at his shoulder. And what now? He took her hand, his thumb tracing the curve of her wrist. Now I learn how to stay. The wind moved through the trees, gentle and full of sun. She smiled, tears glinting but not falling. You're sure you can? He leaned in, voice low. I'm sure of you. Their foreheads touched, the kind of closeness that didn't need words. The creek murmured on, the world alive again. Later, as they sat beneath the cottonwoods, the sound of the water folding around them, she said softly, You ever think the desert keeps our stories? He smiled. If it does, I hope it tells ours gentle. She rested her head on his shoulder, and he wrapped an arm around her. For the first time in years, the silence didn't carry sorrow. It carried peace. The horizon shimmered gold, wide and forgiving. The outlaw had found his rest. The lawman's daughter had found her freedom. And the desert, patient and old, kept its promise to heal what love was brave enough to touch. If this story has touched a tender place in your heart, let your light stay with us. Comment, share, and keep this western fire burning for every soul still riding toward redemption beneath the open sky.